always a pleasure for me to be part of your organized event and to be, in a way, talking across the ocean between Italy and Vancouver. I will share maybe my screen, so I hope, can you see my screen?
Yes.
So tonight, the title of the lecture is quite impressive, even to me. So I'll try to live up to the title itself, and I'll do my best to, how can I say, not to give a lecture, but it's a sort of confession. It's a sort of discussion between myself about the meaning of what I'm, this kind of architectural portraits. So let's see if I can go ahead. So why I call this kind of photography architectural portraits? Well, first of all, I'm an architect by profession. So I think that every architect has a special way to look at the built environment. We look with different eyes, or at least we look with very specific eyes to the world around us, and especially the built world around us. Beside that, I always like to look at people, to investigate about people. I'm very curious about people. So I think that the possibility to put together a certain vision of architecture with a way of looking into people is what drove me in this kind of direction to develop architectural portraits. This picture is very special to me. It's the very first building I designed for my Thai friend, Shle, that is listening to the presentation tonight. This is their daughter, their family daughter, Luke Nok. And it's a kind of self-architectural portrait in a way, you see. I ask my friend's wife to take the picture of us because I really wanted to see myself in the picture with the person and with the with my own project. So it was a part out of the pride to be the designer of the building. It's a very unique building. It's a cafeteria for workers in a textile factory. So, but on the other hand, was this kind of a connection between the body, the two bodies, and again, the architecture that made me desire to take this kind of picture. And I think that since all of you, I think, are somehow interested in photography, I think it's very important to develop your own, and I wouldn't say style, your own way of taking pictures. Because there's no rules, there's no one or many ways, there are thousands of ways. And I think there are as many ways as many people are taking pictures. Today, there are almost 2 billion new photos on the internet every day. So you can find, again, billions of beautiful, incredible, amazing pictures. And if you start looking at some of them, you really see that everyone has a special take on a specific subject. And I think that is the beauty of photography, is the beauty of being able to take picture with a mobile phone, with a compact camera, with a fantastic camera, but that doesn't really mind. What is really important is the eye with which you look at things and you try to impress in your digital media, because now I would say 90% of the pictures are taken digitally. And I think that it's very important not to be stressed about the mean with which you take the picture. It doesn't really mind if you take, it's not so important if you take a picture, again, with a mobile phone or with a $10,000 camera, as long as you know what you're looking at through the camera. So what is an architectural portrait? It's more easy to write it than to explain what it is. I think that it's a fine balance between two very important elements, the body of the person and what is in the picture in terms of built environment. So finding the proper relationship, the proper balance between these two elements is what makes an architectural portrait, an architectural portrait. And again, it's very individual. I can say it's 90% architecture, 10% body, or maybe it's 50-50, or maybe is, I don't know, 70% about the person and 30% about the architecture. And that's very personal. And what I want to do tonight is to give you some example of architectural portraits to explain you what I believe are architectural portraits, and at the same time show you some environmental portraits, which are what we call portraits taken in the open environment or in a specific environment. So the first half of the presentation is about the difference between environmental portraits and specifically architectural portraits. And I think that's a very important, it's very important to define the differences, the similarities between these two typologies in order to be more precise about what I mean by architectural portraits. We start looking at some environmental portraits. So in this kind of a Snow White girl in the middle of the forest, you can see that the person, the portrait, is at the center of the image, is the center of the focus of the photographer. The background often is blurred, so that the focus goes straight to the person. And when the picture is well done, there's also a kind of a relationship between the gesture, the colors of the dresses, and the color of the background, so that the environment is a sort of background, a sort of stage to the person. The moment in which you have a stage and the person is like being in a theater, what you look at are the actors on the stage, and the stage become the scene, the scenography of what you're looking at. I think that this is one of the main differences between architectural portraits and environmental portraits. In the architectural portraits, there's no backstage, but the architecture become an actor together with the person. And again, there can be the main actor, which is the person, and then you have the other actors, which can be the architecture, or vice versa. Sometimes the main actor is the power of the architecture, and the person is just one element inside the framing of the picture. You see, here is very, very clear what is the environment and what is the person at the center of the image. Here you can see that the landscape, this could be a very small village by any seaside in the world, is a backstage, is a stage for the person to become the center of attraction of the beholders. So even if here the landscape is extremely powerful, is extremely strong, yet the person is the central element of the picture. And again, here the photographer took the picture, the sunset. So there's a very nice golden light on the girl, and the color of the dress matches the tones of the picture. So again, it's a very beautiful picture, but it's very clear who is the subject, is the person. Another kind of environmental portraits is when you use the background to explain what is the main person activity or interest. Like in this case, you have this kind of metal shop behind the girl, and the girl looks like she's working there. She's part of that kind of environment. So again, another type of environmental portrait is about explaining the profession or the interest or the hobby of the person which is portrayed. So again, the background becomes the explanation of what is happening to the person in the foreground. Okay, so this is again another type of environmental portrait. This is a very, very famous picture by Irving Penn, I think. And again, the guy is holding the tires, and because of the tires behind him and what he's holding, explain very clearly what the person is doing. So you don't really need a caption for this kind of picture, but the environment becomes the caption, becomes the explanation, become the narrative, the story behind the picture itself. Okay, so again, in an environmental portrait, you can have the background, the environment to explain, to tell the story about the person who is in the picture. Many times in environmental portraits, they use nude photography in order and trying to blend the body of the person with the landscape or with the trees, like in this case. Here we have 3 women that are trying to mimic the shape and the elan, if I can say, of the trees and of the rocks in order to blend, to be part of it. And that's very much part of the environmental portrait, which is like, I want the body and the landscape to blend, to become one only thing. This is me in 6 different pictures. And I want to show this because it's a manipulation of a museum interiors in Germany, in Frankfurt. This is the Stedel Museum in Frankfurt. And I put in all the pictures, all the frames in the museum myself. In this case, I used the museum in order to give importance to my self-portraits. Now, if I only showed my self-portraits like taking the shower or looking at the Western world or drinking a glass of wine, would have not be as important as position in this kind of context. So the context become a way to enhance, to improve, to give importance to my own self-portrait. And that's again a very interesting trick. You know, people, when I show this picture, they really believe that my picture were shown in that museum. So even if it's not true, it really gives importance to the picture itself. And I think it's an interesting investigation.
So, sorry if I interrupt you. So this is not true. So it's not.
No, it's not true.
And that's interesting because it gives you a lot of importance to the fact, but it's not true. It's beautiful. We'll have a lot to talk about philosophically about this self-rendering of oneself.
Yeah, well, I'm pretty sure that people will not stare at my own picture for so long in a museum, or all those people staring at me in a museum, which well, I also used very, I don't know if you can see my mouse, but I use very funny pictures of myself. You see here or here, and but people looking at the picture, they really think it was in the museum. So this is another type of environmental self-portrait. So now we switch to what I think are some good example of architectural portraits. Here, immediately you see that the background is not out of focus, and the background is almost taking over the full stage. It's no more a secondary actor. It becomes a very, very important part of the picture itself. And it's very powerful. And normally when you talk about architectural portraits, the power of the shapes, of the volume, of the light and shadows start to play a very important role. Most of the picture I will show tonight are fashion shooting, especially in the example, because I think the more than many other typology of photography really stresses the point of architecture through the fashion photography. I think this is the Guggenheim Museum in Bilbao. And that building, for instance, has become the backdrop for many, many, many fashion shooting because it's an amazing building. It's an icon of architecture. And it becomes a kind of propeller for the fashion shooting taken there because it really represent a kind of modernity, a kind of high-class design, a kind of unique design. So by using this kind of architecture, what they're trying to achieve is to say, look, my own fashion is unique, special, high-class, very exclusive. In this picture, you see how the model is trying to mimic the angle, the shape, the lines of the architecture behind her. You see, this also, like in the picture of the nude girls with the trees, here the model is trying to blend in a way with the architecture. Of course, the architecture is extremely powerful. So what is interesting is that if you look back to the picture of the girls with the tree, you just look at the girl. But if you look at this picture, your eyes goes from the model to the shape, to the volume, to the shadow, and back to the girl, so that they all play together in a way that cannot be done with an environmental portrait. Here, there's a kind of dialogue between the architecture and the person, which is not there in an environmental portrait or other type of photography. We will see a few more examples or kind of metaphysical architectural portrait, where the architecture is used to isolate and to identify a point of view or a situation where everything is extremely rarefied. If you look at this picture, we don't even see the person in the face, but we see a human body at the end of the stair in the kind of the Chirico painting, okay, where the stair brings the focus to the person at the top of the stairs. And again, here the colors, the blue of the sky and the blue-gray of the stairs really blend together. Even the person which is in dark blue and black, actually all the color are very much coordinated, because if the person were in yellow or red, the picture would have been completely different. Here again, we are inside a metal-clad building, and yes, the girl, the model, is at the center of the picture, but the power of the building is almost taking over from the person itself. You know, we almost look more to the curves and the cladding and the metal sheets than the girl itself. And again, many times architectural portraits are in black and white, because black and white is probably one of the best way to represent architecture, because you stop looking at colors, you are not distracted by colors, but suddenly you start looking at shape, at volumes, shadows and light. So I think that most of the time, architectural portraits are in black and white for this reason. Here we see that in those two pictures, the architecture is by far more present, more important than the person itself. The left picture is in Hong Kong. The right picture, I think, is somewhere in the Middle East. But in both cases, the architecture is by far much more important than the people. Okay, so we have seen images where the person is taking over 50, 60, 70% of the frame. And here we see the person that we almost barely see the person. And the person in those cases is almost used to give a scale to the picture. Without the person, the scale of the picture would be almost undefined, especially the one on the right. But with just one person in the picture, we suddenly give a scale to the whole thing. It's a trick that we normally use in architecture when we do a plan or an elevation. We put the one person, one figure, just to show the proportion of the building or whatever we are designing. So in this case, the people are in the picture to give a scale to the whole image. Those buildings are in Brasilia by Oscar Niemeyer. They're very beautiful, very plastic building. And the photographer, the fashion shoot here is about the plasticity, also an androgen body of the model, which is trying to say, look, the building is extremely sensual. The building is extremely curvy. The building is extremely exciting. And we are trying to do the same with the model. And again, as you can see, they are using black and white because they don't want colors to distract the people. They want shapes, they want shadows, they want lines and curves. And here I think those three pictures, which are extremely, in my opinion, extremely beautiful, really show the relationship between the body part and the architecture design. Oscar Niemeyer always designed extremely, if you can use the word, sensual building. And here, this girl is trying to express the same feeling through the pose, through the way in which she's in relationship with the building itself. The girl, I think, is Gwyneth Paltrow, and this is a staircase in France, and she's wearing a dress by Dior, designed by Galliano. But what I want to stress here is that only this kind of dress can work with this kind of stairs. You know, here the fashion designer has really matched the context, the architectural context. You can really see like this garbage bags dress that really is falling down from the stairs, and especially the scale of the dress is really matching the scale of these huge stairs. There's no other way to give importance to a dress unless you try to match the scale of the stairs. And again, it's a fashion shoot, but it really epitomizes, in my opinion, the relationship between the body and the dress and the built environment. It's a really a fantastic picture, in my opinion. you see here, we are back to the Guggenheim building, which is always part of fashion shooting. And this time it's in color because the girl, the model, is wearing colors that match the color of the sky reflected into the building. And if they were changing the picture into black and white, you would lose this relationship between the blue of the sky reflected on the tiles and the dress of the girl. So sometimes you have to play with the colors because you have a very unique spatial relationship between the built context and the person you're portraying, you're shooting at. And here is very clear. The blue of the jacket is matching the blue reflected on the tiles. Again, here is very clear. They decided to shoot this model with this dress in this specific place because the wall were matching the color of the dress. So by turning this in black and white, this kind of very strong relationship and unique and spatial relationship would have disappeared. So there's no way in this case to shoot in black and white. And on the contrary, by shooting in colors, you really stress this relationship. Also, the blue of the sky and the yellow of the wall and the dress are complementary color. So they increase the contrast between the upper part of the picture and the lower part of the picture. When you work with colors, you can achieve contrast not only by increasing the contrast in the picture, but increasing but using the color contrast. You can use complementary color like green and red, yellow and blue to give a strong contrast to the picture without using strong contrast in Photoshop, for instance. And I think that by using color to create contrast is by far much more interesting than by using post-processing to do it. Sometimes you really need to find the proper location to shoot dresses that require a very unique and special context. Those two models, they were dressed in this kind of, how can I call them, 1700, 1800 dresses, and only with this kind of statues, the dress is emphasized, because somehow the model dress and the model itself, herself, blends with the statue, blend with the context, and it's a kind of an holistic sum. That means the sum of these two elements is by far more than the mathematical sum of the model and the statue, and is achieved by the interpretation of the way in which the girl is dressed by using a very, very unique and special architecture for it. And again, I think that also those two pictures are very, if I can use the word, beautiful. The light, the color, the nuance of the dress, the pose of the model, really beautiful pictures.
Oliviero, if I can interrupt you for a second, there was this comment in the chat that I think it's really relevant in this case, especially in these two pictures, when Judy says, in many of these images, you can see repetition of shape. Often the shape of the model and the building speak to each other. But here, even the shape of the dress speaks to the building. And so not only the shape of the model. I don't know whether you would like to comment on that.
I see that someone is asking if I design render for the photos. As an architect, I tend to do projects rather than to do shooting. So when I take, there are many ways to take pictures. If it is a picture that I think of it before, yes, I do some sketches, and or at least I build in my mind the way in which I take the pictures. But we will see in some pictures that I've taken that sometimes it's really to be there at the right moment or to catch the moment. And then I think that the ability of the photographer is to frame the moment almost without thinking. And that comes when you take thousands of pictures. When you take many, many pictures, it comes natural the way in which you frame the picture at that specific moment, or at least you start seeing things that are going to happen and you try to freeze them in the picture. Okay, that's also, to me, it's a very interesting way of taking pictures, because they are very, I can say, unexpected, and because they're unexpected, they can be extremely surprising. When I do picture that I thought of before, many times they don't live up to the expectation, because I have expectation before that I cannot really achieve in real life. It's like, you know, a 3D render of a building. Most of the time is by far much better than the built building, because it's perfect. And then when you build it, there are always some problems, some differences, or some mistakes. So I do both ways in taking picture. I think of the picture before, and maybe I'll show you, I didn't put in the presentation, but I'll show you some picture that I really programmed before. But many times I take picture just because I see things happening, and when they converge together, I try to freeze to catch that moment. Okay. And I see here, they ask about the shape of the model and the building speak to each other. Yes, definitely. It's not easy, because you need to find the person that really is able to interpret the scene, interpret the situation, and not also the photographer needs to instruct the person to pose in a certain way. And it's not always very easy. It takes a long time. When I do a shooting, probably I take 200, 300 pictures, and then maybe I save 3, 4, 5 maximum, because there's always something that is not exactly as you want it. So yes, we try to match and blend the shape of the place and the pose of the model, but it's not always successful. Of course, we have been talking about architectural portraits, but they can also be architectural portraits in interiors. And this picture really epitomizes a really fantastic relationship between the model, the pose, the incredible painting, and the incredible place. And you see how the colors are carefully staged. The blue of the light blue of the curtains matches in tones all the other colors in the room. And the color of the painting is actually a complementary color to the blue of the room, so that it creates the necessary contrast without producing contrast in post-processing. I think this is really an amazing, amazing picture, beside the pose and the beauty of the model, of course. Architectural portraits can be also extremely conceptual. And here we can see this kind of abstract image of this boy falling back, but not really falling back. And the shadow, which is, you see, the real interest of the picture is the stillness of the shadow and the apparent movement of the body. That is what makes the picture interesting. This contrast between the two elements, which one look extremely still, the other one look like in the movement, in moving. So even achieving this kind of picture is very difficult. You really need to make a lot of tests and a lot of thinking before even taking the picture. I really like this photographer, Benjamin von Wong from Hong Kong. And he's extremely conceptual, but he's also extremely Baroque. And I like this kind of contradiction. Here he's in France, I think it's La Madeleine in Paris. And this amazing picture taken with a long exposure really epitomize the relationship between the strong architecture, the ethereal presence of the fire that makes this kind of wings, and then this person that we don't even see in the face. And so this kind of picture makes you really wonder and interrogate yourself, interrogate the picture about the meaning. And I think the more a picture makes you desire to discover more, the more the picture is successful. Then we have this other kind of photography tricks. The girl is in a subway, is leaning down in a subway floor, but because of the picture turns upside down, suddenly she looks like falling into a deep hole. Okay, so you really need to take your time to, with your brain, to flip the image in the right direction. And that action of flipping the image in the right direction makes you spend time on the picture. And again, as I said before, the more time you spend on the picture, the more the picture is successful. Okay, there are photographers like Gregory Crutzen, who creates what they call tableau vivant. That means like a stage scene with many actors and something is going on. So you need to spend maybe 10 minutes to look into each detail of the picture to understand the narrative behind the picture itself. And he takes probably 2 days to take one picture. Everything is extremely staged. He has a crew of 20, 30 people, but each picture is like a Bruegel paintings with many people, with many things going on, many situations, extremely beautiful. And also this guy on the right side looks like he's falling down, but actually is leaning down on the floor and rising a piece of the floor itself. And then we to finalize this kind of how can I say differences between environmental portrait and architectural portrait. The fine line between the two is always very personal. Like here, it's a building by Pierre Koenig. It was an Austrian architect who immigrates in Los Angeles. So you see Los Angeles under the building. It's a very beautiful building. Very simple, it's just trusses, a few columns, trusses, everything is glass. And many fashion shooting and movies have been done in these places. But here you blend the environment, which is the city, with the architecture, and of course with the body of the model. It's up to you to decide it's an architectural or it's an environmental portrait. Same house, different shooting, different model. You see again Los Angeles behind it. And how can you tell it's architecture or it's about the environment? It's really up to the person looking at it. It's very difficult to decide in those cases what kind of picture it is. So I think we take 5 minutes break. And if you have other questions, I will be happy to answer.
Thank you, Oliviero. And you're welcome to unmute yourselves and ask any questions by yourselves, or if you prefer, you can write in the chat. I have an initial question for you. It's about one of the initial pictures in which you were saying it's like the model is on stage, and it was center stage. So I was wondering whether the model needs always to be center stage in this kind of pictures, or can also be, a bit on the side.
It's when I take picture, it's very difficult to be able not to focus on the person, because the person, because it's a moving person, it's a body, it's a color, it's a dress. You have to be very careful, trying not to put it at the center of the stage, because if you want to give relevance to the architecture, you need to give some kind of strong position to the architecture itself. Nevertheless, you can put the person at the center if you're able to change the proportion between the person and the architecture. What I mean is, if the person is at the center of the image, but is not taking over the whole image, and then the architecture start to speak, then you can achieve the same result as if putting the person on the side and the architecture at the center. I don't know if I answered your question.
Yes, you did. Thank you. Thank you. What about any other questions you might have? We'll also have a Q&A at the end of the talk, but we want also to give you the possibility of asking questions now at the in the middle of the talk. So if
Ludovica is asking if natural shadows or rather post-production shadows. Post-production shadows are always a bit artificial to put into the image, especially if you take pictures in the open environment. Natural shadows are always preferred. It is clear that one thing that I want to emphasize, the picture is not finished with the shooting. The picture is finished when you think it is as you imagine it. That means it goes through post-processing, it goes through many, I do 3-4 passages in at least 3 different softwares to achieve what I want. A picture is not what you shoot. A picture is what you think is what you wanted to see through the image. Even Ansel Adams, that was an amazing photographer and took pictures that were beautiful by themselves, actually spent weeks in the darkroom for one single image to achieve the results he wanted. So the picture is only finished when you think it expresses what you wanted to see when you took the picture, what you wanted to say, okay? Stefano is asking, what level post-production intervention is acceptable and still call it photography? As I was saying before, the end of the post-processing is when you say, okay, now it is as, it's like writing a text. You write it down at the beginning and then you go back to smooth it out. I think this is the interpretation of post-processing. If you make a color photo in black and white, it's okay. The limit is personal. I see pictures which are extremely artificial. But if that is what the photographer wants, it's fine. It's up to you then to like it or not.
And Arthur Molella is asking,
all are female.
Most of your models are female. So are there some situations where you prefer male models for the aesthetic effect you seek?
Actually, I have to say that I mostly shoot female models, but that's because it's easier to find female models than male models, at least for the type of picture I take. And I also think that, but that's my personal opinion, that female bodies are more, how can I say, they better match the kind of architecture that I like to represent. Probably if I were to shoot extremely sharp and strong architecture, probably male models would have been better. But by chance or by situation, like I shoot most of the time in south of Italy, in the Salento region of Puglia, and there is a Baroque, and Baroque is extremely female architecture, if I can use the word. And so the female body much better matches this kind of architecture. Are the pictures taken with natural light only? No, I don't think so. Especially the fashion shooting, there's a lot of lights playing that they look natural, but they're not natural.
Timothy is asking, may I ask you if you always have a purpose for the pictures, a need? For example, the lady in the garbage bag dress, how was this to come about? Maybe you just said what you wanted to see.
That picture was to celebrate the 14th of July revolution in France, and was about showing this kind of immense reaction to the situation by the people. That's why they took the stairs and they took this immense dress in order to express this kind of feeling. So if you ask, there should be a purpose, yes, I think there should always be a purpose. If you ask me, there's always a purpose in your picture, not always, because as I said, sometimes I see a situation happening and I try to freeze it, okay?
And Andrea is asking, why are you using only models in the environmental shots? For example, I could see a violin in the forest, thinking of Stradivari.
Yes, sometimes I do shoot things, but because this specific lecture, someone with the music,
Yeah.
but because this specific lecture is about bodies, people, and architecture, so all the pictures you see are specifically aimed and they target this kind of theme. Maybe we should go on now with the personal case studies, otherwise I think we run long.
Absolutely.
I'll show you a few examples of some of my pictures, and I will try to explain for each of it why it comes about in this specific way. Sorry. Okay. Like this picture, we were driving in in Puglia, going from the place where the makeup artist was preparing the girl to the place of the shooting, and we saw a small Baroque church. So I asked everyone to stop, and I took the girl that was already dressed up into the church, which is a real church. And we sneaked into the church while no one was there. I took the picture. And I tried to show this. This is a dress by a fashion designer, which is really very good, Michele Gaudiomonte. And he always gives me his amazing dresses for my shooting. And I try to show this opulence of the dress with this Baroque excess of the architecture, of the ornaments of the church. And I use this kind of low take to the picture in order to explode this relationship between the girl and the environment. As you can see, the girl is very central to the image, but yet the architecture of the church almost takes over the girl in front of it. I will come back to this at the end, but we always try to have fun taking pictures. Here I was teaching a workshop about the relationship of model and dresses and the built environment. So we got into this cloister, medieval cloister, and I had some of the students dress up like priests, nuns, and the idea was to show how they were like, instead of reading the prayer book, in modern time, they were looking at the mobile phone and walking around the model. And here I try to give more importance to the built environment than to the model. The model, again, is central, but the architecture of the cloister is what is very powerful in this picture. Same model, it's an underground olive oil mill. So basically they grind the olive to create the oil, and then they put the oil in those holes in the ground. So I was trying to show how life in this case is olive oil or food, and was coming out from this hole. So I put a flash under the girl, and because of the transparency of the dress, we got this special light. So again, the girl is at the center of the picture, but the architecture is the one telling the story, telling what is going on there, or trying to, because of course, it's not always very easy. Same place, different girl, different dress. And here I try to express the power of the wheel. You see the wheel behind is the one grinding the olive oil. With this girl that was very thin, very slim, and was almost fragile compared with the big wheel. So this was the aim behind this picture. Same place, different model, and the same dress we saw before. And here is more about the context, almost more about the context than the girl. And the picture, because it's in black and white, as you can see, we really start talking about the big mess of this underground. Basically, it's carved into the rock. This place, this underground place, is carved into the rock. Where you see some light from the ceiling is where they were dropping down the olives to be taken to the mill here. And there was a donkey. A donkey was turning around, pushing basically the big grinding wheel, and the oil would be collected inside this circular kind of fountain, and then put into these big holes, ready to be sold afterward. We talk about catching the moment. The girl was posing for the students, and I was just looking. Then I saw the wind lifting the gown, and then I decided to take the picture. And this is on top of the castle of Otran, which is a beautiful medieval castle built originally by the Norman and then modified by the Spanish. It's really a beautiful place. And here is more about the girl than the environment, but I showed the picture because sometimes you need to catch the moment. A few seconds later, the light was not like that, and the gown was down, and the picture would have been completely different. You know, we talk about architecture, and it's an open air quarry of Pietra Leccese, local stone in Salento area. They use this stone to build the whole city of Lecce. So it's an architecture, it's an industrial architecture, if I can use the word. And here, the girl uses a very metallic dress, which in my opinion, goes together with this kind of cuts into the rock that makes this whole wall kind of a painting, an architectural painting. And the girl is trying with the dress and the position to mimic and to blend with the rock. And you see here, the girl is not at the center of the picture, but being the person in the picture, it takes over your side. But then your eyes goes back to the cut, to these fissures in the wall that look like a earthquake happened. So sometimes you try to match or to emphasize different elements in the picture, because the most important thing is to make people's eyes wander around in the picture, move around in the picture and investigate each corner, each angle of the picture. Here we are near Bergamo. It's a very small Romanic church. And I use the church as a kind of complement to this very fluffy, can use the word, dress of the model. Also, the model is extremely, this model in particular is extremely thin, extremely ethereal. But the church with these big stones is extremely immanent, if I can use the word immanent in the picture. So I use the architectural element and the girl as a contrast. So we can have contrast by post-processing, we can have contrast because of colors, and we can have contrast because of shapes and meshes and elements in the picture. I'm going very fast now. And again, in the south of Italy, sometimes I work for a small non-profit organization, which is called Casa Marcella Pop. And we take picture of people with these orange glasses. I do that around the world. So I take this picture on the airplanes with the military, with pilots, with boat drivers, with everything. Maybe I will send you the link to the page. And in this case, I wanted to take, this is not a real priest, this is one of my friends dressed up with like a priest in front of the church. But here you see the church, because of the angle, becomes almost much more important than the person itself. And again, your eyes goes from the person, from the glasses to the church and back. And that is what I wanted to achieve with this picture. Sometimes I use drones to take pictures, and this was an experiment we were doing. The drone is hovering, and basically in front of the church, this small church, there are a few meters drop in the ground. I could have never taken this picture by myself. So sometimes, especially drones with those big angles of view, are really making the architecture part of the picture, even if are not really decided before, because it's almost impossible with the drone to forget about the architecture or the landscape on the environment. And here, talking about making the girl following in a shape, I was trying to get the model following the shape of the arch of the building. Taking picture to me is about having fun. If I don't have fun, I don't like to take picture. So I always try, no matter what kind of assignment or personal project I'm doing, to have fun with the student, with the models, with the people passing by. You see on the top left, my friend dressed up like religious people. We went around in the village, we took picture with other people. I think that if I have to say, to give an advice, have fun taking pictures. Forget about making perfect picture, beautiful picture. Have fun taking pictures, and the picture will be beautiful. Because it always, you know, it's like when you write, it comes out, your feeling are expressed by your writing, and your feeling are expressed by your pictures. So if you have fun taking the picture itself express your feelings. Don't worry about thinking too much. Yes, you can organize, think, plan, program, but at the end is about to be happy and to have fun taking the picture, to enjoy the moment. Enjoying taking picture is almost more important than the picture itself. So that is my personal advice to everyone. So you see here, sometimes that's me on the left. It's an architectural cosplay. Why not? Why not to enjoy the moment? So also because it's very easy to be the photographer, but it's very difficult to be the model. It's very difficult to be on the other side. I realize that when I do this kind of thing, because I feel the presence of the lens. I feel the presence of the camera. So I said, there's a very famous book, which is Camera Lucida or Camera Chiara by Roland Barthes, that investigates the relationship between the person in front of the camera, the photographer, and the beholder. So each one of them has a very different take on the picture. And to be in those three, exactly, Camera Lucida, Camera Chiara, to be on those three positions helps you understand when you shift. When I'm a photographer, I better understand the model if I try to be on that side. So that's why I easily allow myself to be photographed, because it's an experience for me, very important after work, to be on the other side of the camera. So that's my presentation for today. If you have some question, I will be happy to answer your question. I will be happy to give you some information.
Thank you, Oliviero. I'm sure there will be questions for sure. I have a question for you. It's, let's say, more on a sociological level, about the idea of having the artist within the picture. Now, this idea of self-portrait from the artist's point of view, and especially in this age of selfies. How do you know, artists, whether they are painters or photographers, have always done portraits, self-portraits. But what does it mean, a self-portrait, in this era of the selfie?
Oh, well, you know, this is like a 10 hours discussion, because it's a very unique, it's a very interesting, important subject. I think that if I have to go to the deep root of the selfie phenomenon, is we need to be recognized. We need to believe we are part of something. We need to believe we are alive. And taking a selfie, and especially posting the selfie, is about trying to achieve those goals, trying to say, hey, I'm here, I'm alive, I'm part of the group, I'm part of the crowd, I'm part of the system. And I think that at the bottom of everything, there's an increasing loneliness of people. There's an increasing necessity to feel part of something. And of course, there's narcissism, there's self-esteem, there's many factors that play into a selfie and self-portraits. For me, is exploring. To me, when I take selfies of myself, I take selfies dressed like a fireman. I took selfie like taking the shower. I take selfie after I've drunk too much, because I'm not shy, and I'm not, I cannot expect to take picture of people in their most intimate situation if I don't do the same. And so for me, taking self portraits and selfies is, I take few selfies. I take more self portraits. That means I set the camera and I take the picture. It's a way of exploring. I explore, first of all, I never recognize myself in my picture. And I think it's not my only problem, but I definitely do not recognize myself. I see someone else in the picture. And quite interesting because it means I have a vision of myself, which is not what I see in the glass, it's not what I see in the mirror, is not what, or basically I think of myself in a different way of what I see afterward. So maybe taking self-portrait is a way to come to come to terms with this situation, trying to better understand myself. So that's my take on this kind of thing.
Thank you, Oliviero. They are asking if you could stop sharing so that we can see you in full screen.
See, okay, sorry. Can you see me now?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So someone is asking scale, format sizes. I try to be consistent. If I start in a landscape mode, I try to take all the picture of that session in landscape mode. If I take in a portrait, I start in portrait, I seldom go back to landscape. I try to be at least consistent. Then sometime in post-processing, I do resize the picture sometimes because maybe when I take the picture, I left into the frame something that I don't want to be there. So maybe I resize the picture, but I normally don't change the format of the picture. That's what I don't do.
And Faria is asking, any samples of modern architecture, flying from Rococo and Baroque to modern architecture?
As I said, I normally take those because it's very, I have models here in Bergamo, but my makeup artist, my best makeup artist is in Puglia. So when I want to take very special pictures, I prefer to go there. And I have to say there's no modern architecture, or at least very important modern architecture in Puglia. But like last week, I was in Milan in the new city center, in what they call the city life. And I've found a few places where I want to go and take some interesting picture of modern architecture with people.
And I think there, I have gone through the whole chat. The chatting. There are a lot of compliments. Congratulations for
Thank you.
compliments for your. Do you have any questions you would like to ask directly?
I just want to show you. Just a second. They asked me about pre-planned pictures. Maybe I can show you one thing. Just a second.
Anna Maria, in the meantime, while you're looking for the picture, is saying, I love Puglia, which is a beautiful region in the southern part of Italy, for those of you who haven't been there. I visited a frantoio in Lecce. Unbelievable how people were living at that time.
Absolutely. Now I want to show you, I don't know if I can, let me see if I can share the. Okay, I want to show you the making of one picture. This is the picture, the final picture is the same model in 3 different positions. This was an advertising for an industrial company making this polyester yarn that you can see here. So I made a kind of disjunction. It's an allegory. So we use this industrial suction system like the old, I don't know in English, in the hairdresser to dry up your dryer, actually, air dryer in the hairdresser. And we use the cones, the yarn cones as curler for the air. But what I want to show you, opala, is how I made the picture. Let's see. I hope you can hear the. So you see how.
We can't hear the sound. Because you, at the beginning, you should, before sharing, you should check the at the bottom, left bottom before sharing. You should stop sharing and then.
Okay, what I should do?
When you share screen, you will see that there is at the left bottom, there should be
Share sound. Okay.
Yes.
Let's see. Can you see now? Well, share.
Yeah.
Can you see?
Yes.
Okay, so let's go back. Let's do this. Can you hear?
January 7th, 2018, the 9th transmission and the first one for this year. When I recall the past experiences, I can't help but
This
feel
is a
some sort of
planned
a red line
picture.
going through everything. And this red line is basically fear. Stephanie Pelagaius wasn't interested at all and felt very withdrawn. Mikola Person wasn't interested either, although, fair enough, she took in a lot of new age stuff I was babbling about back then. And my slot Freydic was just whining and too much focused on becoming a woman, or asserting herself as being a woman rather. And my ex Denise Williams was equally withdrawn and very much scared of showing it to me, who she was, because of this fear.
So you see, this is a picture which was extremely planned, unlike the others. I showed just another one and then I think it's okay.
Vida Jurgic is saying, wonderful work, Oliviero. I am an art director and have worked in fashion for years. Your work is truly art.
Thank you. So this is a similar, for the same customer, making this again yarn here. I try to show how a red Ferrari driven by a girl with the red wig and the red dress was hitting the red cones of yarns. And the whole idea is the crashing the red rim. And since you were talking about, for me, it's easy to show because I like what I do. So, but since we were talking about portraits, this is one image which is about criticizing the notion of selfies and also about how a self-portrait that in the past time was about having a portrait taken by a painter becomes a selfie with a cell phone, which is this one. It was in a museum in Bergamo, Accademia Carrara. Okay, I think. So I think you have got an idea of how a pre-planned picture looks like. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Oliviero. Do you have any questions you would like to ask directly instead of me, posing the questions? Or
I have one, Ariana, very quick before I leave because I have a commitment. Oliviero, sorry, it's a very mundane question, but is it possible to buy your pictures somewhere?
Yeah, I can sell them to you directly.
Okay, so through your website, we can contact you and
Sure,
ask
you can ask me.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
If you are interested in, there is a whole section, I mean, there's a whole area of Oliviero's work we haven't touched upon. It's the one about also the use of wallpaper and models. So that's a very, I don't know
yes.
whether you would like to say a few
Sure.
words about that.
It's yes. Let me first get to the.
I find it very original and very enticing. I mean, the way you use something that, I mean, especially in Italy, is considered something old-fashioned, and the idea of wallpaper for us is something that relates to old Britain, and you know, that kind of feel of a British house. And it's not modern at all, but the way you reinterpret it also through, you know, portrait is very
Yes,
original.
just a second that I find it, because it's I have to.
As you can see, we haven't worked on it in the ideas. It's very
Yes, true. It's
how would you say estemporaneo in English?
extemporaneo.
How would you say?
An accident.
On the fly. On the fly.
On the fly. Just a sec. I need to find first the pictures.
Yes. And perhaps I also would have also another question about, when talking about especially environmental photography, about the wilderness, whether you have taken pictures in the real wilderness, not in a natural environment which is close to a city or to a rural area, or
not really, because there's no wilderness here in
Italy. That's what I thought. It's in the whole of Europe, it's very difficult to find the real wilderness. And there is extemporaneous. Thanks, Jill, for it's in English too. So.
Let me check. You caught me a bit unprepared.
Don't worry.
Let me check here.
No problem. We can talk about something else.
No, it's you're right. I should have prepared something about. Let's see if I have them here.
Perhaps you can talk a little bit about the use of drones in pictures, because here Oliviero has also started. I mean, he has been working in these last months on drones, on a particular drone that is bigger than any kind of drones that we have seen so far. And
yes, I have I have one here that I can show you. Let me see. Start share screen. So this is a picture. Can you see it?
Yes, but because we can't. It's a bit small, and that's why we can't see the.
It's a girl that is covered with a texture. So maybe I can show you another one. Let's see if I can find, like this one, for instance. Smaller. Oh, this one. Can you see?
Yes, yes.
So this is a kind of picture where I take a texture and I apply to the body. Sometimes I apply to the whole body, sometimes only to the skin, sometimes only to the dress, sometimes only to the hair. It's really, it depends on the situation. I think here you can see.
Yes.
Those are not mine. These one are not mine, but are example how you blend the texture with the body.
Yes.
You see, like this. I've like this one. I've done a few, but I don't know where I put them. frankly speaking.
Don't worry, thank you for that. But also the idea of using drones in your pictures. And so this also combined perhaps with the wilderness, because this would allow you, to take pictures in a totally different way, from
but I think that in Canada, you just move few miles out of Vancouver, you are in wilderness. In
Yes.
Bergamo, to go to wilderness, I need to take a plane to go somewhere because definitely there's no wilderness in Italy.
Yes.
Maybe, yes, we have mountains, but it's definitely not wilderness.
Absolutely. Okay, I see that we are at the end of our talk here, and also at the end of our Q&A. If you don't have any more questions, I think we can leave Oliviero go to sleep, because it's now what time is it now for you there?
3:25 in the morning.
Yeah, 3:25 in the morning. I think we have already kept you up enough.
It's okay, no problem.
And so thank you again for your talk. And Caro is saying 2 blocks and we have coyotes. Yes. So
I think that if people wants to have the presentation, my presentation are always very graphic, so there's not much writing because I prefer to explain. But if people wants to have a copy of it, they just can ask me or you, and you are free to give them. I will be happy to.
Thank you. Oliviero had sent me his presentation in PDF format, so I can easily send it to you if you would like to have it. Again, thank you, Oliviero, for your time and your words. And see you again for our next event, which will be a webinar on with 4 meetings on Friuli Venezia Giulia, which is a region in the northeastern part of Italy, very little known, with a lot of secrets and treasures that need to be discovered, and that you will discover together with Patrizia Pietroniro, who comes from that region and loves that to talk about her region. So see you next time for our next event, and good evening to everyone. And
thank you. Good afternoon, good evening to you, and I hope to see you soon for some other lecture on some other topic.
Bye-bye.